let's say I've got all of my photos in here in a folder. I'm going to open it up in Adobe Bridge. So to do that, you just click on the folder and drag it into Bridge. Bridge is an organizational tool. It allows you to edit a bunch of photos at once and to add what's called metadata, which is information about each photo, who made it, any notes that you have on the day, giving context to the photo. Just a great way to organize and rate your photos. So here's my first photo. What do you notice about this photo? What's wrong with it? Yeah, it's underexposed. So I want to bring out the shadows here. And I guess we'll do that and see how it looks. So I'm gonna, yep.
How do you take the folder? Do you
just drag it into Bridge? Yeah. You could open Bridge too and then find the folder. It's up to you. So you can right click the photo and you open it in Camera Raw. That's what we edit with. And I know you guys probably do all of your photo editing on your phone. That's great too. Like the photo editing tools that are now that kind of baked into the phones are pretty powerful. Like most of the stuff that you could do in Camera Raw, you could do in Lightroom or even just the photo app on an Apple smartphone or any of their competitor smartphones. So when we open up Camera Raw on the right, these are all of the parameters that we can control. And it's organized in folders that you can expand or shrink. So here's Basic. And let's go into Basic here. This is color temperature. Luckily, what is our light source here? It's the sun. We don't have any competing color temperatures. So the phone didn't have any problem white balancing this. It looks pretty white balanced. So I was saying this is underexposed. Here's the exposure line. So I'm going to bring it up. It's better. And I'm actually okay with that, but we can do another thing here. I want to move my exposure back to 0. And we can just bring up the shadows too. We can be selective about what needs to be brighter or darker. If you just want to focus on the shadows, you could go to the shadow slider here and bring that up. And that does a great job with this photo. Basically, the sky is functioning as backlighting. And when you have backlighting, the things that are in front of the light, in this case is all of these people, they're going to look like silhouettes and dark, very, very dark. So if you kind of pinpoint that, okay, really what I want to do is bring up all of these shadows, just move the shadow slider up. Questions about that? Let me go through some other settings here that I play around with. I like to give it a little clarity, which it kind of adds a sharpness to it, but also it's like a detail as well. Some other programs, I think the photo app calls it definition, and I think Instagram calls it clarity as well. So those two, both of those terms, they do the same thing, clarity and definition. So you can bring it up a little bit, and it just kind of, you see how like it gives a little more detail to the figures. I'll bring it back to 0, and then when I boost it up, and you can definitely go too far. Like that looks crazy, right? That looks like way too muscular in a way. This is kind of approaching not natural, which is we want natural photos. We want to try to match what we see with our eyes. So I'm just going to bring it up just enough so that It adds a little detail. And then you can give it a little vibrance. Just a little, like maybe 20. So I always have like one or two students that go too far, and then they take the saturation and they bring it like all the way up to here, and that's just not natural. We don't want that. So what is the difference between vibrance and saturation? Vibrance brings up the saturation to everything except the skin tones. So this is useful because it's usually the skin tones that start to look unnatural when you add a bunch of color vibrancy. So usually I don't really mess around with saturation most of the time. I just bring the vibrance up a little bit. I'm pretty happy with that. Curves, you don't need to mess around with this. It's just another way to play around with your darks and lights. Detail. This is useful if your shots are not in focus. You can click on the detail tab and increase the sharpness. There is a threshold. You can go too far and it'll just look really, really artificial. What's nice under detail too, if I was shooting in low light in like a restaurant and there was a lot of color noise, you could do a little bit of noise reduction and tweak that. That ends up having the effect of making it look a little soft, so you can't really do too much, but you can tweak it a little bit. Yeah. It's like the little pixelations. When your shot looks, if you shot in like a restaurant, usually you'll see kind of a pixelated image.
So then how would you make it like blend it? Or
Yeah, it blurs out those little pixels. So there's only so much you can do. It ends up looking way too soft and mushy if you take it too far. You can look at these on your own, but generally I try to just keep it at basic and detail. And then you can click done. And there is my shot there. And what's nice about Bridge is that when you used Camera Raw, it didn't affect the original photo. It just basically wrote a bunch of rules to edit the photo. And so it's a non-destructive way to edit your photos. You always will have the original version to go back to. Let's see. Yeah.
Should I have like 2 copies of my photos?
No, you don't need to.
So if I change a photo and like edited a bit and then clicked on, you'll only see that one photo, right?
Well, you want to upload the originals first for me.
Oh,
as a cloud link. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, you're right though. I mean, just to make it easier on yourself, just duplicate it and call one the raw, and then call the other one edited. Raw, edited. Okay. Here's a nice portrait. Let's open this one up in Camera Raw. Open. So he's looking a little in the shadows here because he's got this canopy under him. So I'm going to go to basic here and bring up the shadows. This brings him up a little bit. And then bring up the clarity just a bit. The vibrancy is fine. I'm happy with the color. So really what I'm doing is trying to match the photo to my memory of that day. Trying to be as accurate as I can. And this is great. This could actually work fine as the final image, but I want to crop it. So I'm going to open it up. And now it'll open up in Photoshop. Do some cropping. Who's used Photoshop before? Okay. That was the first Adobe program I ever used in high school. All right, so here is our photo. I'm going to zoom out. Just using my trackpad to zoom it out, squeezing in and out. So C is for crop. And then you can just move the corners. And be sure to, there's a button here, delete cropped pixels. We don't want that. Be sure to keep that unchecked. That means I can always go back to the original file if I want to. So if I click return here, let's say I'm not happy with that. I can press C again to crop. And you see that the original file is still there. I can bring it back if I want. See, all of it is still there. So if I wanted to keep this one as a copy, I can go to File, Save, Apply, and it'll just go in the same original folder that I had it in. And just to be safe, I'm going to keep it as a Photoshop file, which means it'll keep all the layers, but I'll call it edited so that I keep track of the one that was the original one and the one that was edited. Save it, click OK. And now here's the edited one. Here's the wider one. Let's look through these. Okay, this is a fun shot here. I like the motion, but the horizontal line is not straight to the edges of the image. So I want to straighten it out. So I'm going to open it up with Photoshop and then click on the crop tool. And then there's a ruler icon. It's the straighten button. And how that works is if you click on the ruler, just click on 2 points that should be the horizon line, and then it'll adjust the horizon line based on what you've determined. Click and drag. Sorry. And then it automatically straightens it out for you. So that's the fast way to straighten. I mean, you could go to the corners here and rotate as well and just eyeball it. That's fine too. So either one of those methods work for straightening. And let me go back to my ruler. Click, drag. And Camera Raw is actually in Photoshop too, so you could do all of the Camera Raw stuff in Photoshop. You go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and then do any kind of tweaking that you want to do. So maybe I bring up the exposure a little bit, bring up the clarity a tad, click OK. With this, everything is shot at the farmer's market, so the lighting is kind of can be pretty much the same. And so if I was happy with the adjustments that I made on this shot, then I could bring in all the other shots and just go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and it'll just do all the edits that I just did on every single photo. So it batch edits for you. It kind of simplifies that process. So I'll show you that in Bridge. We just did, I think we did, yeah, we did this guy in Bridge, right? So let's find another shot that might work for. So this shot, if I right click it, develop settings, previous conversion, it will use all of the edits from that last version. Yep. Window, layers. You got to make sure that your layer is selected for that Camera Raw to show up. So if I didn't select it, So now this is not selected. Filter, none of that shows up, right? Just be sure to select that layer. And that'll show up. And what's nice about this is like, you know, I've had to shoot like weddings and different events where I've shot hundreds of photos. To be able to keep track of the ones that I like or that maybe the client likes, Bridge is really good for that, because if let's say I like this photo, you can go to label and you can just give it a rating. And if this was a 5-star rating, and then I could go and just say, I only want to see the ones that are 5-star, right? And then that will show me just the 5-star ones. Let's see, no rating, reject, decrease, increase. Yeah, that's under here, under the filter. Show 5 stars, and then I've only got that one. That just, it kind of helps you organize what photos you like, what photos you don't like. So that's the filter button here. I'm going to clear the filter so I can see all my photos. See if there are any other ones. See, this one is nice, but it's a little kind of blah. It's like kind of muddy and it's not that sharp. So I'm going to open that up in Camera Raw. Maybe bring up the exposure. Bring up the contrast. Clarity. Okay. Well, it's pretty vibrant already, but so I'm not going to do too much there. Let's see if I can sharpen it at all. Detail. Sharpen. Okay, that's better. And then I want to do some cropping, so I'm going to open it up in Photoshop and use my straighten tool here. And this awning is a good one. Click. Didn't do much though. I think it's because it's a little twisted. So in that case, I wonder if I'm going to go back to my selection tool, move, edit, transform, perspective. And now I'm going to tweak the perspective a little bit. Feels straighter to me. Okay, and if once you're happy with it, file, save. I'm gonna rename it edited. Save. Click OK. Yep.
So, what was your like? I saw you did the straighten tool at first. And how did it work? How did you reapproach that?
So then I went into the Distort Tools. You go to file. You go to File. No, Edit, Transform, and there's a bunch of these tools that will distort the image. I tried Perspective, but Distort would have worked pretty well too. Just play around until you find the one that works for you. So let's compare those two. Here was the original. Actually, that was not the original. The original was. So as I said, it keeps the original. This is basically it's non-destructive. It's just giving you instructions to actually do the edit. So I can look at what the originals look like still. If I right click and let's see. Revert capture time to original. Oh, that's not it. What happened to the revert? Oh, because that's the PSD. Okay, let me go back to the JPEG and develop settings, clear settings. So that will take you back to what the original one looked like. So I'm going to press clear settings. So that was the original. And then here is the edited version. So you can always go back to the original. Again, if you right click, go to develop settings and clear settings, that will take you back to the original. That is the advantage of Bridge. It's a non-destructive editing approach. Okay, let's find something that has some white balance issues. Wow, I love that this dog is the same texture as the street. Here we go. All right, so we've got clashing color temperatures here. There's some daylight coming in, that's blue. All of the artificial light is warm. So I'm going to try to white balance these walls. Open in Camera Raw. Basic. And there are two ways to do this. You could just play with these sliders. The top is from cool to warm, right? This is too warm, so I'm going to move the slider towards the cool. There you go. So much better. Or, I'll bring it back to 0 here. You could use this eyedropper and select for what should be white. And then it'll adjust automatically. So I'm going to take the eyedropper, click on this poster here, because I'm going to assume that that should be white. And then that does its own guessing game. And then you can tweak it. This feels a little too blue for me. So I'm going to just tweak it and move the slider over. The bottom sliders are for green to red. So sometimes, especially if there are like 3 or 4 competing color temperatures, you're going to need to slide these around as well. But always look to, in the photo, look to what should be white and determine your adjustments based on that. And I'm going to click done for that one. And you'll see in here, we can rate them immediately in here too. Click done. Question?
So you just selected the eyedropper tool next to the white balance?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll do another one. So here's another issue. So open in Camera Raw. We got all this daylight coming in that's cool, and then all the artificial lights are warm. I'm going to try to white balance for this white sheet of paper here. So click my eyedropper. Okay. It looks a little too cool for me, so I'm going to play around with this slider a little bit more. Move it to the right. And so they are competing with one another, so you have to make a choice about how much warmth you want, how much cool you want. This is a toss-up there. So I definitely don't want it this much, but maybe this is a good balance between the two. And she's in shadow, she's backlit, so I'm going to move the shadow slider up a little bit. See if that helps. And these highlights are blown out. So under highlights, you can bring those down a little bit. That helps bring the highlights down a tad. Clarity. She also looks a little hazy for some reason, so I can go to this dehaze and see if that helps. A little bit. Bring the vibrance up. And I'm feeling like there's a little bit of a green in here, so I'm just going to play around with the green and the red too. See if that does anything. Too much, too much. negligible. I don't think it really is helping at all. Definitely too green there. That feels good enough. Okay. Click done. And you can, look back and forth between the versions that you make. So here was our edited version, but you can go to develop settings, clear. That's what it looked like originally. And then I can go back, develop settings, previous conversion, and it'll bring it back.
Should be like down in the bottom, that little square there.
This one?
Yeah.
Nice.
Like before, after.
Yeah, that is really powerful. Thank you, Brian, for showing that. So this is the before. This is nice. Before, after, left on the left and the right. So you can see exactly what you're doing. So if I go to basic here, and I went all the way to warm, you can see if you've improved it at all. That's great. Thank you. Okay, let's say you made all of your edits. I'm going to select all of the photos, and then I go to Tools, Photoshop, Image Processor. And this will actually turn them into JPEGs. So save as JPEG, quality 12. I don't think I have a size requirement, but 1920 is fine. And then you run it, and it'll make compressed JPEGs of all of the things that you edited. So it's going through its batch, compressing all of it for you as JPEGs. And a folder should show up in your bridge of those processed files. And that's what you would submit as your edited files. Let me go to bridge and make sure. And here's the folder that it made, JPEG.